From the Internet Law and Policy Foundry, this is the Tech Policy Grind podcast. Every 2 weeks, we'll discuss recent developments and exciting topics in the technology and internet law and policy space. I'm Reema Musa, and I'm a member of the 4th cohort of Foundry Fellows. The Foundry is a collaborative organization for internet law and policy professionals who are passionate about disruptive innovation. In this week's episode, we're kicking off a new series within the show, Foundry Fellow Highlights. Every now and again, we'll catch up with a current or former fellow with the ILPF and hear their stories, from their current work, lessons learned, and everything in between. For our first iteration of Foundry Fellow Highlights, I had the honor of chatting with Meri Baghdasaryan, a legal fellow at EFF and a member of the current class of Foundry Fellows. Hi, Meri. How are you?
Hey, Reema. I'm great. How are you?
Doing well. I'm excited to chat with you today. So, you're a legal fellow at EFF, and your work focuses on the very interesting intersections of human rights, free speech, and surveillance in the digital context. And that's a really fascinating sort of combination of focuses. But how did you get here? What was your sort of career path that led you to this work that you're doing now?
Thanks, Reema. First off, thanks for having me. Happy to share my journey to EFF. So, honestly, I think it's important to say that the first time that I got any interaction with any topics with tech law and policy was when I was doing my Master of Laws degree at Central European University in Hungary, and we had a special course at the seat of European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, and it was called Internet and Human Rights. And the case that we were mostly focusing on was called Delphi versus Estonia. And for people that follow the topic of intermediary liability, this case set the precedent for the Council of Europe member states and also has been echoed in the EU law on this same issue. So this was the first time I started thinking about the intersection between technology, human rights, and internet, and honestly found it so fascinating. But unfortunately, at the time, I didn't see more opportunities to get involved in this and dig deeper into these issues. And after this degree, I went back to my home country, Armenia, and I started working for UNDP as a consultant and also doing international human rights litigation before the same court, the European Court of Human Rights and UN Human Rights Committee. So my practice focused on so many different human rights issues, from fair trial to prohibition of torture, and from anti-discrimination to women's rights and rights of persons with disabilities. So it was quite broad, but this spark that I had back in Strasbourg with this course was still alive and kicking, I would say. And literally a year after my graduation, I accidentally came across a fellowship program by Internet Society, which was, I think, called Introduction to Internet Governance. And I was more interested on the digital rights aspect of it. And honestly, it was part of a bigger program known as Youth at the Internet Governance Forum. And I didn't know anything about internet governance or the forum, but again, my focus was more on the digital rights. And I took the course. It was a month-long course with weekly discussions. I tremendously enjoyed my participation in it, met great people, and I'm still friends with many of them. And it turned out that this program had a second phase. So if you had a great participation in the first phase, then you were given a full fellowship to go to that year's Internet Governance Forum, which in 2016 was in Guadalajara in Mexico. So, my interest led to a trip to Mexico, where I met a huge community of people working in so many different fields, representing different stakeholder groups. I discovered a wide variety of issues in this space. It was a bit overwhelming, honestly, but basically, this was, I guess, it was meant to be. And I met a lot of good people there. One thing led to the other. I got later engaged in European communities for internet governance, started working on different research projects, and working with clients on these topics, and having kind of understood the landscape on the European side, I was really curious about the US perspective on tech law and policy. So in 2021, I graduated from University of Pennsylvania Law School's LLM program with concentration in intellectual property and technology law. And this was very insightful experience for me to have this comparative perspective on these issues. And then I spent my summer at Wikimedia Foundation, and then I started at EFF. So it's been a wild ride, I would say, but also I went through, a lot of self-reflection throughout this journey. So it's been, going from broad human rights practice to human rights and general tech law and policy issues. Yeah, and I think I'm pretty happy with the whole journey.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, and thank you for sharing your story and your sort of career path. I think it's a unique one, and something that I think is particularly interesting about your background is how international in scope your work has been, and where your work and educational career as well has taken you. And so, sort of on that note, what do you think is the role of the international lens on tech law and policy in informing both your personal career interests and journey, and then also perhaps the field as a whole, and how these issues that you work on in particularly uh, interact in the international context?
That's a great question, Rima. And honestly, if you asked this question to me maybe 4 years ago, my answer would have been different than it is now. Because when I first started engaging in these communities and thinking about these issues, everything was considered to be more global. Internet was viewed as, something we all share, and that was the only lens that was not the only, let me correct myself, it wasn't the only but the dominant view on these issues. And every country, every stakeholder, every company was trying to come up with solutions on the global scale, and not to end up with any type of fragmentation, any type of local solutions that will make work on the international scale more complicated. But as you also know, in the last few years, we have seen so many initiatives on regional or national levels that try to regulate the internet from their own perspective and in their own way. And some are better than the others, but when you look at the bigger picture, this makes the process more complicated. And also, what I love about the internet governance space, unlike the UN processes, when you have the governments talk with governments, and then the civil society is maybe allowed to participate sometimes, or is there just with their shadow reports. In the internet governance communities, everyone has the same footing, so you don't have to be government representative to have a seat at the table. However, I would say that this model is also in some form of challenging situation right now, and with the rise of more regional or national regulatory initiatives, the role of international law and generally, regulating anything or finding solutions, not even regulating, but just finding solutions or having a vision on a global scale is not where it was when I was starting out in this space. But this makes our lives, especially the lives of lawyers or policy professionals, more complicated. It's also really exciting because we need to understand how to move forward, how to enhance innovation and support it, while also trying to reduce risks. But at the same time, it's really challenging to be able to handle that many regulatory initiatives. On the other hand, I think this is a good time, or maybe we're getting closer to that moment when we'll need to, sit down and reevaluate where we want to go. And I hope that will be something that we'll all do together on a global level rather than regionally or on national level.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting because I think, to your point of that the reality of these regulatory frameworks, that especially the ones that are continuously emerging in fields that maybe didn't even exist 10, 15 years ago, such as AI and data privacy and things of this nature. um, it's interesting to see that a potential benefit is a more localized, sort of tailored approach, uh, based on what those particular communities face, and cultural considerations and things of this nature. But I love that point you brought up of coming together in the end as a global society to think of a way forward, especially when it comes to these very big picture issues, and still sort of integrating that global perspective. So yeah, I think that's completely fascinating.
No, I just wanted to add that I really hope that we can, go from, you know, in the beginning, everybody was so excited about technologies, and in a way, this led to everyone also, like not everyone, but the majority, to disregard any potential harms. And then we got into the phase of techlash, and all we see is more of the problems than all the possibilities and opportunities that technologies can provide. And I think my big wish is to go back to being excited about technologies, but also know that harms are possible, and come up with more mitigation strategies or think through everything before going forward. So going back to what you were saying, I hope we can figure this out together, because internet is it's global, and I hope it will stay global. So we'll see. I'm really hopeful still.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. uh, so now shifting gears a little bit, what are you working on right now at EFF?
Wow. So yes, EFF is an exciting place, and I'm really thankful for the opportunity to spend this year working with both EFF's domestic and international teams. So being a foreign trained attorney with more international experience, I'm helping EFF have more engagement with different cases on digital rights issues before the international courts. For instance, we submitted amicus briefs in a case about right to be forgotten before the European Court of Human Rights. There was another case which basically extended the case that I mentioned, Delphi versus Estonia, the intermediary liability rules to general any social media user, which we think is too expensive, and it's just gonna end up having more chilling effect on legitimate free expression rather than help fight any type of illegal content online. we recently joined actually a case, an amicus brief before the European Court of Human Rights in an encryption case. So really working on a variety of different issues, but all are very important cases, and we hope the court comes out the right way and public interest will be preserved. I also work on the newly proposed UN Cybercrime Treaty, where EFF and partners are trying to make the treaty as human rights centric as possible. For instance, I was mapping the member state positions, trying to identify any potential points of contention, any problematic, proposals, following the work of the UN ad hoc committee, and working with partners from around the world. And also in the frames of this treaty work, I with my colleagues, we put together a blog post about the importance of excluding any content-related crimes from the UN Cybercrime Treaty, because this is a treaty about criminalizing illegal behavior online, and using ICTs if we use the UN language. Criminalization is a measure of last resort. And even if we talk about hate speech and disinformation and any potential real life consequences that they may have, it's not so straightforward that this type of behavior needs to be criminalized, because who can define what is hate speech or what is disinformation? Or there are different levels for hate speech, and etc., etc. So it's a very complicated issue, and we're trying to put forward the EFF's position on this matter. And on the domestic side, I work on amicus briefs. For instance, one was about mass carry cases, or do research. For instance, I was comparing the right to privacy under California Constitution, and the standards around it, with Fourth Amendment standards, with regards to the, especially with regards to the third party standing. And yeah, I was surprised to see that California, in some regards, is more privacy centric than the standards on the federal level. And I was also working on a case during the discovery process, and as an attorney who has been trained in the civil law jurisdiction, and we don't really have the rigorous discovery as it exists under U.S. law. It was fascinating to see the work and the thought process that goes through this discovery phase of litigation. So in other words, I'm doing more research, litigation related work, and also some policy work at the FF, and all of it is really interesting and really educational for me, I would say.
Yeah, and I want to dig in there on a point you raised of the very complicated nature of a lot of your work, and especially these quite technical topics, um, as it pertains to perhaps cybercrime and uh, figuring out how to best configure uh, encryption in a way that is beneficial to the policy framework that you're working on for surveillance or the like. And so in that vein, how do you inform yourself about these uh, very technical topics, especially with your perspective as an attorney? What are some strategies that you use to learn about these topics as they continuously emerge?
That's a very important question, I would say, because it's not necessary, or I would say it's not required to have a technical background to work in tech law, but it is really useful to understand the details, and especially if you work in roles that deal with more product related issues, then it's really beneficial to understand this. So my approach is usually to ask questions. One of the benefits of working at EFF is that we have um, a number of great technologists, and they are always ready to answer all of your questions, and review your work if it has more technical aspect to it. So this has been a great experience for me to see how different the people from different backgrounds can come together and do this important work. And on more personal side, I'm currently doing a course from Harvard called Computer Science for Lawyers, and actually an instructor from the Computer Science department of Harvard University is explaining all the major concepts around internet, from cybersecurity, from and then to DNS and TCP/IP, and everything you can think of that sounds too threatening. But even before that, I have been selected as a next gen at the ICANN program, and ICANN provides you with the opportunity to dig deeper into the technical aspects of the internet. And I specifically wanted to be engaged in this space to enhance my knowledge on more technical aspects of these issues, because that really gives you a different perspective on the policy or legal issues that you are trying to put forward. So in a nutshell, I would say this is a field that is growing continuously, and it's it's really growing fast. So as in any field, but especially in tech law and policy, you need to be a continuous lifelong learner, and reading books and taking courses and talking to your colleagues, or just doing a fellowship together with your job, I think are some avenues that people can take to gain more, knowledge about the technical aspects.
That's really great. And I love that you're still taking classes to learn about the field and get that sort of technical understanding. It's so interesting at USC. We also have a computer science for lawyers class. So now you've inspired me a bit. Maybe I'll end up taking that before I graduate. But that's really fantastic. And so that's a great segue into my next question. And you've mentioned, your involvement with some of these different organizations or fellowships or opportunities outside of your main gig, so to speak. From Internet
Yeah.
Society to ICANN, you're involved with the Foundry as a fellow, and I know you're also involved with the Internet Governance Forum. So yeah, it would be great to hear you speak a little to what other projects you're involved with outside of your work with EFF, and what opportunities you've taken advantage of.
Yes, sure. So first off, also as a disclaimer, I am a fellow at the Internet Law and Policy Foundry. So far, really enjoying the experience, getting to know people, and doing great things together. So, a moment of advertisement. If you want to join, follow us on social media and just email us if you have any initiatives to get involved. You also mentioned the Internet Governance Forum. To clarify, this is the Internet Governance Forum in the United States. And this year I'm co-organizing the first ever Youth Internet Governance Forum, or as we call it, IGF USA, which will take place virtually in July. And please stay tuned to learn more about it. The registration is set to open soon. And the idea behind this event is to have youth involved in this space, organize an event for other young professionals in the field who have not really engaged with internet governance, and come meet and learn more about the processes, the stakeholders, and the main topics. And this will be a pre-event for the IGF USA, and it will also provide a sneak peek into the program of the conference that will be a hybrid event, the in-person part taking place in DC. Um, Other than the foundry and organizing the Youth IGF USA, I am a steering committee member for the Internet Rights and Principles Coalition, which is a dynamic coalition at the UN Internet Governance Forum, and it is a network of individuals and organizations committed to making human rights work for the online environment. Really excited to have been elected to the steering committee, and really enjoying the experience of working with my colleagues from around the world. So hopefully we'll make interesting projects in the next 2 years. And in addition to all of this, previously this year, I was coaching University of Pennsylvania Law School team for the Prize Media Law Moot Court. And the team ended up being the runner-up at the Americas Regional Round and qualified for the international rounds. Really proud of the team, and media law is one of my main areas of interest and expertise. I was really happy to work with the team and see them qualify for the international rounds, and I also really believe in mentorship. So I was a mentor with the Legal Mentor Network, where I had several students from various law schools as my mentees, and we were discussing pathways to tech law and policy from non-conventional backgrounds, or just getting started in this field and this type of questions. So really enjoyed working with my mentees as well. So yeah, trying to give pay forward whenever and whatever I can.
That's incredible. And it's amazing that you've had all these wonderful experiences and opportunities to enrich your own learning, but also to give back to the communities that you're a part of, the greater tech law and policy community, but um, communities that you've been involved with and learned from in the past. And I think that notion that you raised of mentorship and really paying it forward and staying connected is so important. um, as future generations cultivate their interest in this field, and it is such a quickly growing field that needs a lot of talent and a lot of great minds working together to solve some of tech's biggest problems. So I think that's amazing. And kind of on that note, do you have any recommendations or advice for perhaps students, the youth who might be interested in following in your footsteps one day and having a career uh, that's as enriched and really full um, with experience and tackling these interesting topics as yours?
Well, as I said, I really believe in being a lifelong learner and also believe in mentorship. So I would say never stop learning, seek out opportunities. ICANN fellowships or the Next Gen program are a great way to get involved in this space and learn more about the technical aspects. Try to look out for the Internet Society's Youth Ambassadors program. um, I think the the deadline is sometime this month, so try to apply to that, and they have that every year. You can take a lot of online courses to be more versed in the issues that are in discussion right now, or learn about the stakeholders out there. Join the foundry, of course. attend the events, just send us an email if you have any thoughts. And in terms of mentorships, I think a lot of people are really open to share their experiences and um, give you some advice based on where you are in your career. So I would be also happy to chat with anyone who has any questions or needs a sounding board. In general, I think it's important to be open to opportunities, but also know what you want. But also, to know that you need to try. So don't be afraid to try, and also be fine with the fact that you may try something and you may not like it. Or you may discover something new. So, for instance, for me, it was intellectual property law. Never thought that I might enjoy that, but it turns out I do. So, that opens up new opportunities and new areas to explore, which is fascinating, I think. And in general, I would say just, try to build your community, definitely network a lot as much as you can, and never stop learning. And I'm sure, everything will work out. So, yeah, I don't know if my rambling was useful, but hopefully people can find some nuggets there that may resonate with them.
No, I know it definitely resonates with me, and I think that that is great advice. So, Mary, what's next for you?
Oh wow, yeah. So this question has no specific answer, and I think that also resonates with another favorite expression of mine, which is we are all work in progress. So, my fellowship at the EFF is coming to an end in a couple of months, and I'm actively seeking my next role and really excited about this journey and excited to see how it unfolds. But as I said, I started with focusing only on free speech and privacy, and then I discovered that I also like, intellectual property and all these issues together. So there was a time when I was really pushing myself to figure it out. So which one is the one, but then I realized that that's not mandatory. So it's there are ways to combine them all, and I'm trying to be open, as I said, and hopefully I will find my next role will be the one that encompasses all of my interests and expertise. So I will update you once I have more specific answers about the next steps.
That's really exciting, and I'm really excited for you. Uh, and yeah, if our listeners want to keep up with you and your, journey and your work, where can they find you?
I am on LinkedIn and Twitter. Feel free to also send me an email. I will share my email with Reema. If you have any questions or want to chat, happy to set up time to meet and talk tech law and policy and human rights and IP and anything else you're interested.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for taking the time to chat today. It was amazing to hear all about your varied experiences and how truly interesting your career path has been. So, looking forward to seeing what's next for you, and of course, collaborating here at the Foundry as we do.
Thanks so much, Rima, for listening to my journey. And yeah, looking forward to working together.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Tech Policy Grind podcast by the Internet Law and Policy Foundry. Be sure to check out the Foundry on LinkedIn and Twitter. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps out the show. If you're interested in supporting the show, reach out to us at foundrypodcast@ilpfoundry.us. You can find our email in the show notes as well. The Tech Policy Grind podcast comes out every other Thursday. See you next time.